Good afternoon, everybody. Trish Telesco here, along with my companion, Casper, who's going to probably be sleeping there the whole time I'm talking. Um, I'm really glad to have you all here, and I'm really glad to have this experience because I haven't been out on the road very much. I wanted to talk a little bit about kitchen magic because when we think of kitchen magic, we think about, cooking and being in our home and that kind of warm, cozy feeling. But we are a society that's constantly doing things outside of our home. So this is kind of like, how do you take the magic with you? I mean, we know it's inside of us, but sometimes you want to do more than, just that internal working. You want that external component to help you bridge the gap between mundane and magical. And there are some neat ways you can do it. But before I start, I want to let you know you guys can ask questions anytime in this. I'll answer as I see them come up. I'm not joking. I gave that up about 6 months ago. One of the neat things you can do for yourself is make what I call a portable altar. And you use an empty matchbox, any type. I mean, I like the metal ones because they're a little more durable. But you can put an miniature candle in there, a little crystal, some matches. Incense matches are really cool because then you get the aromatic effect. And you can make it as general or as you want, like simple white candle, quartz crystal, anything that works. But you can put that whole thing in that little box if you want to. You can even cut a little piece of cloth, see if that's a little cloth out, like an altar cloth, and then set the candle, and everything else is however you feel comfortable. But now you really have all your tools in one spot. They're just a little smaller, and they can go with you anywhere. If you want, you can make several. I used to keep one at my office just to be on the safe side because there are just days at the office that you just want to pull your hair out. Probably looks like I have right now. Um, it's uh, it's a really neat trick, and it's very very simple, and you can adapt it to your personality and how much you want. Little box, slightly bigger box. I just like the little ones because they're very easy to carry. The only thing I don't recommend is if you're flying, don't use a middle one for obvious reasons. You're going to want to use like the cardboard boxes, and that way you don't have to deal with the whole middle disaster issue or packet. Um, Now, there are lots of places we go. What do you do at the family reunion? you know, um, what do you do when you're visiting somebody for an extended period? Um, in my case, in October, I landed in the hospital for 3 months. And I'm sitting there going, huh, I've got nothing. I have none of my home tools and other things I'm used to. That you start looking around and looking at your space in slightly different way. For example, soap. It's almost everywhere you go, and you can use it for purifying, for cleansing. Just because it's in a slightly different container or box doesn't mean that it's any less, um, what's the word I'm looking for? It has any less potential. Everything, in my opinion, in this world has the potential to become a tool if you just get creative. And sometimes a little crazy. Have a little fun with it. You don't have to be stuck in a box. I think that's one of the neat things about taking the philosophy of kitchen magic and keeping things stupid and outside. There's no real construct that you must, do. You don't have to, jump on one foot, pat your head, and face north. You don't have that opportunity, but you can think yourself if you don't feel like you can say something out loud. You can think them. The universe still hears us when we think. And actually, the thought is where the magic begins. That's where your little spark comes from. You put thought into action and to words and, into movement. But it all starts with that one little spark of thought that you put out there. So don't feel weird if all you can do is think your spells or your meditations or your prayers. That is just as powerful as anything else you might do out loud. or in a circle. And there have been times when I've actually been, invited to a circle, and I didn't know any of the ways that they did things or anything. So for me, using that thought to join in with that and observe and learn at the same time was a really neat blessing because I got to see a whole different way of doing things and learn from it while at least participating on a mental and spiritual level. Didn't have to say anything, didn't have to move, didn't have to do anything, but I wanted to be present in that moment and make my energy at least open to what they were doing and open to sharing my energy to whatever they wanted to achieve. So keep that in mind. I really think that's the biggest lesson for me anyway. For a while I got really stuck in this stuff, you know, had to have this crystal for this, that candle for that, aromatic for this one I'm cooking, no, I have to use this herb, not that herb. Get out of that mindset a little bit and let yourself be intuitive. Not everything means the same thing to everybody else. Say you're shopping and you're at a friend's house and you're picking up some food and you're thinking, well, gee, I'd like to make something that's symbolic. But what's symbolic to you is different than what's symbolic to me. And I always tell people this. If I don't care if 10 books say that an apple represents X, Y, or Z, if it means something different to you, that's the really important part. What it means to you. Because if you try to do it from someone else's perspective that you have no connection to, then that's just going to fall flat, splat on the wall and nothing happens. But when you connect with the personal meaning, personal experience, that in itself is huge energy because now you have wrangled in this item or items and claimed them and actually, said, okay, this is me. This is what I feel about this, and this is how I can work with this. And the energy will naturally unfold because you're not struggling to do something that doesn't make any sense to you. People sometimes say that, psychology has no place in magic, and I absolutely disagree. We have to, the old saying, know yourself. Psychology has a lot to do with it. And that's one of the wonderful things because if you are already of the mindset that your life is not just being a kitchen witch, but rather living the philosophy of the kitchen witch, it becomes much easier to take that energy outside your door and work with it. Uh, Keeping it simple is obviously the core of our entire concept. I mean, you can get really fancy with kitchen magic. When I cook, I get really fancy with kitchen magic because I love fancy food. But outside of my house, sometimes you just have to go with what you got. Going back to when I was in the hospital, they would give you some options of food. but nonetheless, it was food. And so I could kind of try to pick things that I thought would be helpful to me, anything that might be uplifting, anything that might be healing, and then just simply bless it before I ate it. When we consume something, we internalize it. So it's a natural process. You don't have to actually bless your stomach after you've swallowed. You're taking in all the magic that you've already created and letting it process and brew inside of you. So you can even think that way about, someone else's meal. What are they serving you? Is there something there that really strikes that magical chord? And just be aware of that magical chord when you're eating it. Accept the energy in that item, accept its blessing to you. It's easy to do because, and you don't have to worry about Aunt Mary getting all wigged out because you're casting a spell. Similarly, I don't always do crowds well. So when I'm in a group setting, like a family reunion or picnic, I sometimes feel a little awkward. And that's another time when I kind of look around and see, okay, what do I have here? I have a tree. I'll sit up against the tree and I'll let the tree ground me out. Easy enough. It doesn't mind. You know, one of the beautiful things of trees is that you always know where they stand and they don't go anywhere on you. Um, it's not like it's going to get up and move and run away at that particular moment. And I really like that because I could still talk to somebody, but have that tree behind me as strength and grounding and living energy. Trees are so cool because they communicate to each other underneath the ground. And so I kind of think when you tap into that outside, you are also connecting to an entire underground network that can speak to you and give you ideas. And so you might find yourself coming up with brand new concepts in all your while you're doing these new things or different things because it's taking you out of your normal mold and put you into a place where you have the opportunity to experience this whole different type of energy level and figure out what it does for you. For me, I love getting outside and gardening. I can't do it anymore, but I'm going to try and teach my kids to do it for me. Um, I I love getting my hands dirty, but the funnest thing for me was growing corn in suburbia. And everyone laughed at me. And said, one year I had this horrible year and I was outside and was trying to do something and I couldn't, no matter what I did, it just didn't work. So I finally got frustrated and threw all the seeds up in the air and said, whatever. It's the best yield I ever had in my garden. And I got corn. It didn't get big, little itty bitty corn, but it grew. And watching it move in the wind and all those little things, it just, it was neat. You kind of get a feel for what it might have been like to be a farmer where you could look at an entire field of corn all moving in harmony. Um, and that's another thing in the car. Look out your window when you're traveling, when you're driving. But if you're sitting as a passenger, you could look out your window and see all these neat little things that give you inspiration. When I was a kid, we used to count calves. Now, I'm not sure if that's inspiration, but it's the idea that you're making your eyes look in a different way. You're not just letting everything slide by. You're taking a moment, taking an image, making it into, oh, no, oh, when I get home, I might want to try this. Or when you get to wherever you're going, you might want to try that. You'll see little houses and little garden things. I love the little houses that people put in their gardens. And that really struck me as a neat way of doing one of two things, of creating an ancestral altar outside or creating a home for natural spirits outside that welcome them, or both. But I really like the concept of giving them a space. Our bodies are our home, our sacred space for all intents and purposes. But our homes are the next extension of that. So when you make something like that and put it in a place of honor, every time you pass it, it reminds you, oh, my ancestors. Oh, thank you. Thank you, elementals. Thank you, spirits, for being here, for helping. Um, and you don't always have to put it in your home. There have been times that I've gone to hike in the woods or a little creek, and I'll just take a handful of crystals and just kind of drop them here and there wherever I feel like dropping them, and just letting them be. They're kind of my offering to the land at that moment. What the land decides to do with it is up to the land. Um, I don't try to coerce it at all. And I think outdoors in more natural settings, as hard as they're hard to come by sometimes, it's one of the best places. When I was little, I would used to go out and sing to the pond and to the trees and to the creek. None of them seemed to mind if I was off tune. But I look back on that now and go, is it any wonder that I'm a pagan? Is it any wonder that I'm kitchen, which I always was? I just didn't know what it was. Because that was my sanctuary. That I've always felt at home in that moment. I could pick the berries and thank the plants, and I could, talk to the trees, and I could watch the little guppies in the water. And they were wonderful because they never seemed to have a care in the world. It was just swim, 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 happy, happy, happy. And I thought, there's a lesson too, swimming through life and being able to be happy even if the waters get a little tumultuous. That's a challenge in these days. I think a lot of people are very anxious, depressed, scared because there's so much uncertainty out there. So you have to look for your certainty in your own sacred space of you and take that with you wherever you go. Now, I'm going to say up front, it doesn't always work. There are times that you just can't get out of that mental framework easily. But don't give up trying because otherwise you're going to end up spinning yourself further and further down into a place that you don't want to be. It's very dark and it's very unmanageable until somebody or something comes along to help, bring you that lifeboat and bring you back out. For me, it's laughter. If I ever stop laughing, if I ever stop cracking jokes, I'm in real trouble because that's my dark place. I can't find anything fun or anything to smile about or anything, even happy thoughts or memories don't seem to come because it's just not there at the moment. So I try very hard to, if I feel it coming on, put on that silly movie or pick up the phone, talk to a friend that's really goofy or, go out and do something fun like putt-putt and just transform that negativity into something positive and fun and hopeful, even if it's something goofy, perhaps even more so if it's something goofy. I find if I'm on the road and I stay at people's houses a lot, and their pets become like this great, wonderful treat. Except that when I come home, my animals kind of look at me and go, yeah, you've been cheating on me, haven't you? But that's a great way to really get into communication with other people, especially spiritually minded people, because then you can talk about, I'm getting this feeling from your cat, or your dog seems to be really interested in X, Y, or Z, and they'll accept that, and then you get this really cool conversation about the spirituality of animals, or anything else in the house, outside of the house. I don't know how to point out all the little things, Do you remember as a child just like picking a dandelion that's gone to seed and blowing on it and making your wish? That magic hasn't gone away. You will still do that. Yeah, if anything, it's a beautiful bit of symbolism because you're moving your energy, your thoughts, your hopes out to the wind, and the winds can carry them where they need to go. Fireworks the same way, but for me, I tend to use fire to get rid of stuff. When I really want to make something disappear into ashes, that's what I use fire for. But I will then later take those ashes and plant them somewhere with a blessing, because I think even out of the worst of things, you can grow something new. If you've ever watched a forest that's been burnt down and the new growth comes in, it's like that. Despite everything around it, that plant went, I'm going to grow. I'm going to grow right here. Or the flowers that crack through the sidewalk. And when you're walking, you're like, wow, you're really doing the thing. I think that we can be those flowers wherever we go. We can crack through the sidewalk or whatever other wall we're dealing with our outlook and our energy and our positivity. I think of kitchen magic as being very happy. When I am no happier than when I'm dancing in my kitchen and cooking, I put on old rock and roll, and the whole house is like, Mom, turn it down. But I love it, that upbeat energy and that moment takes me through my other days of, the x-rays, the doctor's visits, blood work, da da da. The last 6 months has been that nonstop for me. So for a while, I couldn't cook. I couldn't stand up long enough to cook. And when the first time I got to go in the kitchen and make myself an egg was like, oh, I felt like heaven and earth had moved, and there I was. I was back. I could feel it. I was back. It reconnected me. That silly little egg reconnected me to who I am, even in a different way now. Um, I've changed a lot, and I've been challenged a lot, and that's kind of why I brought up the information about being hospitalized. There are so many of us who have chronic conditions, and we take those chronic conditions wherever we go. When people don't always see them, they don't always understand them, and that makes it doubly important for you to be able to find a way to keep your um, energy, your sacred thoughts, and your sacred heart, and your sacred soul alive and vital, and helping to support you. I know that a lot of kitchen witches I met love to serve others, but please remember to serve yourself too. It's a lesson that I had to learn in a hard way, because I would give and give and give and then wonder why the heck I didn't have any energy left. So there are times when you have to say no to say yes to yourself. And people who love you will understand that no. And people who don't are probably people you don't really want in your life very much, or, or at least keep them at a arm's distance. And that's, I think that's a challenge for anyone walking a spiritual path, whether you're a kitchen witch or not, is how do you maintain your integrity in your spirituality when you are hit with these people who are challenging this and challenging that, or you have someone at work who's really grumpy all day, and it's just messing with your aura. All of these things go into who we are when we come home. I have another cat at me. Sorry. I tend to take time to wipe my shoes before I walk in the house, because to me that's symbolic of getting rid of any exterior dirt and going over my threshold clean, not bringing anything into the house with me, no remnants, etc. It's a simple little thing, but it helps me. It doesn't help necessarily with other people who decide to come into the house and leave things hanging around, and then you have to go and clean up after them with whatever you need to do. Brooms are great for that. Again, sweeping things out. And I obviously can't carry a broom. Well, I suppose you could put one in your truck. But I did find when I was working on those little altars, I did find miniature brooms that were used for craft making. Literally this big, just a perfect little size if that's one of the symbols you want to put into your portable altar. Craft shops, I gotta tell you, awesome places to find neat, nifty things from magic that you would never consider, especially if you're looking for small stuff. I like to do handcrafts. Handcrafts don't always like me, but when I find these things, it's like, oh my goodness, I can do this with it. Going out and getting lace and then beading the lace with actual crystals that have symbolism and meaning and energy, and then using that lace as a gift on something. Very simple process, but it's exciting because it unfolds as you're doing it. And it's like you have an idea in your head, but after a few times of putting things on, you suddenly realize that a pattern's coming out that you didn't expect. And that's because that's a pattern that needs to come out. It's the one that's supposed to be there. I've had that happen when I write. I'll be writing along and having a grand old time, and all of a sudden I'll stop, and there'll be one word, and I'll sit there and go, no, not that either. No, not that. I'll go crazy looking for that one word or three words until all of a sudden, there it is. It's the book begins to speak to you. It becomes a living thing, just like your diary or your book of shadows. It can become a living thing. If it starts taking you in a direction, listen and see where you end up. Uh, I do believe, just like houses, I think that every item that we touch, that we own, has its own story and its own message to bring. Walls really can talk if you listen. And some of their memories are great, some of them are wonderful. You walk into somebody's house and know immediately that they were arguing because the energy in that house is so weird. That's your wall communicating to you. And being spiritually aware in those situations helps a lot because then you know, oh, I should shield myself a little bit or be prepared because what's to come is not going to necessarily a peaceful, happy, joyful visit. I'm sorry. And so I like saying, keep your antenna up. Put it down when you feel overwhelmed. But generally speaking, I kind of think of our psychic and spiritual awareness as a dial. And you can dial it in, and you can dial it, and you can dial it down. And the time to yes, I'm good. Dial it down is when your empathic energies are just overwhelmed. You're getting everything from everybody, everywhere, and it's all coming at you all at once. That's when you want to dial it down. It's like, okay, I need to let go of that. You don't want to let go of it forever, but until you stop feeling all of that chaos, you need to do it. When you're going into new situations, you want to dial it up so that you can be more responsive and in the moment and in the place and really, get things off on the right foot. As for tuning in, I think of it as a radio. And you're trying to find that channel. And I like using that concept when I'm talking to somebody who's having trouble understanding my ideas or I'm having trouble understanding theirs. So I try to imagine that dial, coming to a place on the radio where we both hear each other and understand each other. I have had entire arguments with some people only to find out that we were saying exactly the same thing in different ways. We weren't dialed in. And when you realize it, you start laughing. And you know why. But what one word means to you means something completely different to people who you talk to. So in your communication, which you have to take with you no matter where you go, it's a good idea to see if you need to dial in. If you're just sitting there going, I don't get this, try and dial in and see if you can find that specific energy channel that helps you understand better. I had a friend many, many, many years ago, and he was brilliant. I mean, brilliant to being, oh my God. But a lot of times he would say things and I couldn't really comprehend them because they were so big. But I used the channel idea when I was with him to at least get a feeling for what he was saying. A sense of peace or a sense of joy or a sense of excitement. And every once in a while, a little bit of understanding on a deeper level. Every once in a while, I just be like, Dan, real words that people understand. But it helps. It helps when you don't understand, and you need to do that no matter where you go. It can be the bus driver, it can be a coworker, it can be a little kid that you come across, but it's all the same. We're coming up on the end of our time. Wow, that went fast. Does anybody have any questions before I say goodbye? Man, you all are quiet. Did I scare you?
No, I'm gonna jump in, Patricia, with my audio. So unfortunately, the chat issue happened again. So we have a lot of comments that you did not get to see and are not getting to see. Really enjoyed listening. Um, I feel you speaking to my soul, sending much love. And I don't know, I'm not sure, I'm not seeing any questions. Anybody have? We've got time for maybe one or two questions.
For those who said something, I'm sorry I couldn't respond. I don't know. Is there a way to get a transcript? So maybe I could like
Yes. Yes. So
share with them.
I will send you an email when we're after we've wrapped up here, and then you can see what everybody had to say throughout the presentation. Everybody loved Jasper and they were counting cats.
We have five. They're just hiding.
Sydney says your kitchen witch's cookbook is my Bible.
I love that. It's kind of mine too. And if you haven't gotten it yet, I have the new book out that is Cooking with the Kitchen Witch, and
Yeah.
it's a whole new book, nothing repeated, of new recipes and new ideas and new methods that I've learned over the years of cooking, and I think you might really enjoy it.
We do have one question, so maybe time for one question and then we'll wrap things up. But Phil asks, would you say that living your philosophy has brought you peace and joy in life?
For the most part, I mean, I'm going to say every religion has a bump in a road. You know, you might come across someone who doesn't do things quite the way you do and not necessarily the way you like, but acceptance is a big part of it. I do love being a kitchen witch. I love the happiness I get when I'm able to do something for someone else or make something for someone else that's based on that particular concept. Um, I never knew when I first started on this path, I knew nothing, absolutely nothing. And when I stumbled into my first circle, but I'm so glad I did because that day my life changed and it's never gone back. I've never had doubts. You know, it's been 40 years on this path. And I figure if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Wonderful. Any last thoughts before I?
You know, smile more, laugh more, um, give yourself grace. When you don't quite get there, give yourself grace. So many people don't. We are so hard on ourselves. So remember that you, as much as you do it for others, do it for yourself. And beyond that, I'll just say, peace out, kids. Okay, I'm a hippie. What can I do?
Thanks so much, Trish.
Thank you for having me.